And we're going to go ahead and begin the webinar. What we're going to look at first is the basics of image insertion into the Generations program. For those of you who've had the program for a while, you know that there are two options to insert an image. The image is your backdrop to create embroidery. This is your Create toolbar. If you follow my mouse, I'm going to go all the way over to the upper right-hand side of my work area, and you can see there's insert lettering, insert monogramming, and this icon here is insert image, and that's going to be to insert your backdrop. Now there's also a menu option for those of you who are more menu driven, and it's under Create. So we're going to go ahead and click on Create and insert image. You can also insert from a trained source, but we're going to cover that in another lesson. So let's go ahead and insert our image. We're going to talk about some of the images that you work with. You can see that there's JPEG images here and WMF images, and as you scroll down there's some bitmaps and a lot of different types of images. Well, each image behaves a little bit different, and there's some things that you have to look at with regards to WMF images. If they're original WMF images created in a vector program, then the artwork is going to be very crisp and clean. If there are a JPEG that's been converted to a WMF image, it's still really a JPEG. So we're going to start off with a WMF image, and WMF is a vector format. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. When you're inserting it into the program, right now you guys are going to see simple artwork. In the upgrade, you're going to see vector file if it's a true vector. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stay with simple artwork for right now. When I'm in simple artwork, if in fact it's very simple, then I don't have to worry about anything else. The program's going to take this image and look at these areas and assign fill types automatically. From there, I'm just going to be editing the fill types and giving it some characters. So let's go ahead and say OK. My image is inserted. This is my resize option. And you should pay attention to this because sometimes you have an image and you think that it's so big when it displays on your screen, and you put it into the program and it's either very, very large or it's a very small image. This image is a pretty decent size. Now, these are in millimeters, which is my preference for working is in millimeters because it matches up to my hoop size. So if I look at this size and I know that my hoop is, a 5 by 7 or 130 by 180, I might want to change this, or at least note that I'm going to have to change that size. So let's go ahead and say OK. And there's my vector image. You can see it's really quite large. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this smaller on insertion so you can see that option as well. So let's go ahead and just delete this and we'll go back to our Create menu and we're going to insert the image. Let me scroll back down to my mermaid. And again, I'm going to take her to simple artwork. When, I would normally leave her at vector, but the upgrade has not shipped yet. We'll be shipping it, we hope, very soon. So let's go ahead and say OK, and I'm going to go ahead and resize her. She doesn't need to be quite this big, so we'll make her about 170. Okay, so there's my mermaid, and you can see the program has outlined these, lines already. If I right-click on things, they begin to highlight, okay? Now, when it looks at this image, and it's a WMF or a vector format or any design that I'm automatically digitizing, the background area is also considered an area. The program will just not generate the stitches unless I tell it to. So let's go ahead and put stitches into this design. So there we have it. I might want to do a little bit of tweaking, maybe, change some of the fill types in this design, but I've got my design and most of the work has been done very, very quickly. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and open a new file, and we're going to do her again, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. So let's go ahead and find my mermaid again. And here's this mermaid. We'll go to simple artwork. Now I'm going to explain a couple of things in this interface very quickly. In the interface, if I go down to background, remember I told you that the white area was in fact, an area, and graphically it is. But I've told the program not to generate the stitches in the background when it does the automation, and to automatically pick this background color. And in this image's case, the background color is predominantly, or all white actually, so that's a good choice here. If I have an image that has a darker background, I might want to, double check and make sure that it's picked the right background color. So I'm going to go ahead and insert her again, and we'll resize her. We'll make her a little bit smaller. All right, so here we go. We're going to auto-generate. So without going into a lot of fills, because we're going to cover those also in another technique webinar, you can see that I've gotten most of my work done. Now when I auto-generate, these areas are in auto judge. Okay, and that is when I would need to go in and maybe change them, like on the hair. Do I want all of the hair to be satin? Or, those are decisions that you make. Now let's take a look at the background. If I right-click on the background, you can see that I have all of these flashing lines. A lot of times this becomes very confusing. So if you get into the habit of bringing your image in, right-clicking on the background color here, you can remove the stitches by holding the Control key and pressing Delete to remove them permanently from your screen. That way, this will never generate. Okay? To show you what I mean, let's go back to this one. If I accidentally catch this and I generate, then you're going to see the background stitches appear. See? And if that happens, no big deal. You can just right-click on it, press Control, press Delete, and you can remove those stitches. All right, that is on a WMF image that has true vector files, and you can see truly, other than changing some of my fills and maybe a little bit of editing, when it's a true vector, those lines are very, very clean. All right, let me go ahead and shut her down, and we'll take a look at another image type. So let's go back to Create, Insert Image, and here's a JPEG image. Now, JPEG images, even if they're high quality, have a feature that allows the colors to degrade on the edges so that they visually blend in to a web page or a print page a little bit, if it's a high res for JPEG. But they're not typically really good images. Now these are pretty simple, right? But they're still not going to be great images. So let's go ahead and select our butterfly, and let's insert the butterfly. You can see it says scanned image. And the reason is that this is degraded in color. There'll be like light green and then several different shades blending into that white. But this is a simple enough piece of artwork that I don't need to go into the scanned image editor. I'm going to go ahead and show you what this does, but then I'm going to show you a better way to handle a very basic image. So let's look at the scanned image editor. We'll say OK. And you can see it's kind of going along, and because this is simple enough, it's going to, go ahead and locate those colors, right? But you can see like the edges are kind of rough here. And, it's because of that degraded color on the edges. Now, I could increase my threshold. So let's go ahead and take it up to 100% and apply it. And we'll let the program process this. And, it's got it, these little edges still that have picked up. And that's my simplified view. Here's my original view. Simplified, and you can see it's kind of picked up those little degraded colors on the edges, right? Original view, nice and smooth, simplified view. So if I would insert this image, if I said continue, it's going to insert the image, and it's going to pick up all those little bobbles, okay? So I'm going to have these little bobbles, and you can see I might get a bunch of different colors, because it picked up all of the scanned edges. See those little tiny flashing pieces? Let me see if I can zoom in and show you. See the little flashes here? It's because it picked up those little degraded areas of color in the JPEG image. Now, I could clean this up. I could take a lot of time cleaning it up, but I could also save myself a lot of work. Let's go ahead and make a new file, and I'll show you how to handle a very simple image that's a JPEG image. Let's go ahead and insert the butterfly again. Now, if this is simple enough, I'm just going to say simple artwork. And then I'm going to pick my colors. And to do that, to control the number of colors that are going to be seen in this simple JPEG, I'm going to come over to Define Colors and remove the check mark from Auto Select. Once I do that, I can set a maximum number of colors. And I can completely control it by just simply clicking on the Pick Color button. This maximum number, if I just enter a number like 4, it's going to try to color blend things. If I click on the Pick Color option, then I get to come into this editor, and you can see there's my image. It's zoomed in. And one thing I have to remember is the background graphically is a color. So I need to pick that background. There's my background color. And, I can kind of slide through the design here. I can zoom out and then slide. But the next thing I'm going to do is I want that green. Then I'm going to kind of slide over. Here's another green. It's a darker green. You can see the colors are showing up on the side, right? There's a pink. And, let's scroll down. There's yellow. And we can scroll over. And, make sure we have all the colors. And just use your sliders and double check. So what I've told the program is there's the background color. This is the one green I want, the second green I want, the pink and the yellow. Now if I make a mistake and maybe catch something on the edge here, like that pale green, see? Then I just left click on the color chip I don't want to select and press delete. Then I can say OK. And insert this in now for auto generation. And I just say generate. And again, from this point, I'm just going to begin to change my fills or do some minor editing. And in this case, it looks pretty good. So I might not have to do too much of anything. But that's a way to control simple artwork. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at how to control an image that maybe has a little bit more detail than that. Let's go to create and insert image. As I go to create maybe something like this bitmap that has images or has more colors or has some detailed things, I might want to control this a little bit better. Now, bitmaps are generally pretty simple artwork, and you could try automation first. And the reason a bitmap is very simple is that it generally is crisp Windows colors without a lot of like shading or multiple shades of green or yellow like our butterfly showed. But I'm going to go ahead and insert this image, and we're going to take a look at what's going on here. Now this image ironically came in as a scanned image. Most bitmaps will come in as simple artwork. So as soon as I see that this says it's a scanned image, I can do a couple things. I could say simple artwork, and I could define my colors here and hope that, these colors blend well. But I might run into some problems with these ivories, right? Or I could say, let's insert this image as a template, and it becomes a backdrop. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And I'm not going to worry about resizing it. And here's my image. Now, when I insert as a backdrop, the image comes in very faded. And that is because it's assuming I might want to manually punch over this. If you want to see more color in the image, with the image selected with the black bounding boxes like this, press the plus key on your keyboard. Now, if you have a numeric keyboard, you can just press the plus key. If you don't have a numeric keyboard, because some laptops don't, you will have to hold the shift and plus key to make this steeper. So let's go ahead and click on plus, 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 and I've made it darker, and I can see the colors better. If you want to fade it out, just press the minus key, and you can fade it out quite a bit. All right, so here is my image. Now, I don't want to manually punch everything in this, but you can see like why it came in as a scanned image. It's not real crisp and clean, right? So let's do something that allows us to take an image that isn't quite as crisp and use automatic features in it. So I'm going to come over to my Create toolbar, and I'm going to go towards the bottom, see where the Generate is. There's a magic wand right above it. I just click on that magic wand. Now what the magic wand is going to let me do is going to let me pick an area, and I'm going to start with the bird. So I left click on the bird, and you can see why that image is not a very good auto-generation image. Now I could have maybe controlled it a little bit with that option to pick my colors, but anything that's light such as this, I might have some problems with it trying to blend into the white. So when I have something like this, if I just click OK right now, then, or if I press enter, either one, I'm only going to get what's flashing in this image created. So let me go ahead and say OK. And this is what I have. That's all the program was going to create. And that's not what I want. And this is simple enough that I don't really want to have to manually punch these simple shapes. So let's try this again. I'm going to press Control Delete and get rid of that. Here's my tolerance area box. It comes up in this corner when I click on that. Now I have some control here. So if I have an image like this that's kind of simple, or if I have an image where there's simple sections, I don't want to have to manually punch everything. So I can come over here and I can use this tolerance tool. So this is all that the program is seeing in blue is right there. If I start sliding the tolerance tool over a couple of notches at a time, then the program will pick up the rest of the blue shades in this. If I slide it a little bit too far, I'll get the entire design. So make sure you see where those flashing lines are. So let's slide this over. Now, if I click OK here, then, this will be fine. I'll have that area. But I have this little tiny hole here, and I have this big hole. Now, the big hole's okay, but that tiny hole is going to be a problem. So I'm going to come down to the noise slider and just slide that over a little tiny bit. And you can see I'm able to get the flashing lines to be gone from where the eye would sit and still keep this hole. So let's say OK, and this is what we have. There's our area. It's created very quickly, right? Now I can do this for each area, but I can also do something else. Let me press Escape, and I'm going to left click on this and move the body of the bird aside for right now. Let's click on our wand and come over here and click on this again. Now my last settings are what's going to be used, and they're generally good settings for the entire rest of the image. But maybe I don't want this wing to have a hole either. Maybe I think this solid area and then putting the wing on top is better. If that's the case, just slide your noise slider over and keep sliding it until that's filled in. Okay, so you can get this whole area to be created without any holes. Now, the reason that's important is, let's go over to the cat here. If I just left these settings as is for the head of this cat, then I'm going to have some problems when I go to stitch this. First, the eyes are too small. These little whiskers that are coming out, they're going to be too small too, and then the nose would be too small. The rest of the color selection is pretty good. I've got these flashing lines here, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So this is what I've got. And I'm going to go out of 3D so you can see, I guess it's tough to see either way, but let's zoom in. If I don't use the noise slider, see the holes? That's not going to stitch very well, and I'm going to have some gaps in these holes, not to mention in these whiskers. So, knowing how to use these controls is important. So let's go ahead and click on the head again, and if I slide the noise slider over just a little bit, it's covered everything. If I just took it a notch, then, it doesn't seem to, if I took it like one notch, it covers in these whiskers the eyes, but the nose is there. So the nose is small enough that I would put that on top too. So I'm going to slide over till I see no flashing lines on the inside of this and say OK. So now I've got the solid head. And I can do this for all of the pieces in a design. But in most cases, if I have a design that requires it to be inserted as a template, I'm going to do some manual punch. So let me move our cats and our examples out of the way, and I'm going to kind of zoom in just on this area. Now, I did the solid head for the cat, but I need to manually punch some of those areas, or at least get the nose and everything in there, right? Well, to get to the nose to create it, or the eyes, I need to maybe hide this. And in order to hide this, what I need to do is go out of 3D view, and I can just see this, but I'm probably going to end up picking the brown, right? If you can see well enough here, you can try it from here. But sometimes it's a good idea to take this area and come over to your film strip and click on the little eye icon that's in that cell. If I'm out of 3D preview and I click on the eye icon, that area is hidden from my view. It's still in the design, but it's hidden. And then I can choose to manually punch or use the automation tools. Now, be careful when you use the magic wand. If you pick an area like the eye, take a look at that and make sure that it's rounded. We'll remove the noise and maybe scroll up a little bit, see if we can get a little more rounded. But because it's pixeled, because those pixels are square, the chances of my getting this to be shaped well are not good. I would be better off to just use the manual punch tools. Now let's take a look at the nose. If I click on the nose, it's going to be kind of the same thing. I can remove that noise and kind of slide up and see if I can get more of the nose. But when it's simple shapes like that, you're often better off to just come over to your manual punching tools. Remember to turn off your tools, press escape. And, pick the eye. Even if you don't hit the eye dead on right here, remember to press escape. You can just left click on it and move it, right click on it, and come down and make it orange. And then if you have one of the eyes that you like, then you can come up to your copy and paste and just move that over. For something like the nose and the whiskers, don't be afraid to use your manual punching tools. On your Create toolbar, there's a little Create Freehand area. Just click on that icon, and it's very simple. Start in the middle. Don't always start on a corner. And you can just come over here and say, left click makes straight lines, left click, left click. And you don't have to join them. The program will auto join them. Just press enter. And there's my nose. From there, you can put a fill type in. All right, so this is, how you can handle, basic images, and how you can take some images that have problems. Even though this looks like a very simple image, it had some problems, and use the tools in the program to create the areas very quickly. That way, if you do need detail things, most of your work can be invested into the detailed things in a design for manual punching. Thank you for attending our webinar. I'm going to go ahead and stop for a second and ask if you have any questions on what we've shown so far. And if you do, there's a question box on your controls, so you can go ahead and enter your question in, and it'll kind of flash up on the screen.